Hey, and welcome to the highlights of episode number 197 with Dr. Stephen Cabral. Some of my favorite parts of this episode were when he shares what alcohol does to you physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I also loved it when he shares about how you can create new healthy habits that don't involve drinking and what you can do instead. I also loved hearing about the link between alcohol, candida, gut health, and leaky gut, and how alcohol affects your hormones. But there is so much more knowledge and wisdom that you get in the full episode. So to listen to the full podcast and get all the info in the show notes, head on over to melissaambrosini.com/197 right now. Welcome back, Stephen. It's so great to have you on the show again. But first off, where did this whole history of binge drinking come from? Like, how have we gotten to where we are today with such a binge drinking society?
Well, so one of it is simply access to alcohol. You know, it is so plentiful everywhere that you go. I don't know if it's the same in Australia, but believe it or not, here in the United States, you can literally go to your, local grocery food store or even a gas station and pick up alcohol. So very easily available. And the other part is that, just like you were saying, many people drink alcohol to forget or to just, at least if it's only for 12 hours, to quiet the mind of all of their different problems. So it's a really great escape. Now, I say great as in that it actually works, but it only works while someone's in that state, and then eventually they have to come back and face life. And oftentimes is what I found is that life is even more challenging after they've had the alcohol.
So what is alcohol actually doing to us physically, emotionally, and spiritually? Because it's not just affecting our physical body. What is it doing to us?
Well, so a couple things I like to say right away is that alcohol is a known poison, and you are feeling the effects of that poison. So that's actually where you get the inebriated based feeling, is that it's poisoning the body. It is toxic to the body. The way that it works is that you're feeling the effects of the alcohol, which is breaking down in your body as ethanol, and your liver is having to detoxify it. So if you think about it, we've done so much work now. We know so much in functional medicine about liver detoxification. Well, think about slowing down that process of eliminating all the 77,000 man-made chemicals, right? You're just walking outside and breathing in brake dust, and you're getting lead in the air. You're getting chlorine and fluoride in your water. The average woman is exposed to 126 different chemicals, endogenous chemicals, from makeup and shampoo and conditioner and lipstick, which they don't even know has lead in it. And they're being exposed to all these things, but the liver, luckily, is doing its best to keep up. Now, if you put alcohol into the system, it has to slow down its detox processes in order to deal with the biggest toxin right now, which is the alcohol that you just put into your system.
Why do you think that in the blue zones, which is the cultures around the world with the most centenarians, in almost all of the blue zones, drinking good quality red wine is part of their culture, and it's named as a pillar of longevity? Do you think it's the wine or the socializing and relaxation side of things that has the benefits?
In terms of the blue zones, this is something that I've studied inside and out, because all I care about in my practice isn't who's right, who's wrong, but what's the truth. It is my opinion that the alcohol, and I can back this up with research as well, but alcohol is not extending lifespan by itself, but what it does is it decreases the stress hormone cortisol. Now, it does that when you are enjoying yourself. If you are miserable, that's a different story. But with the blue zones, what do? Well, they gathered as community. They got around, they worked for the food, they cooked it, they might have each brought some things together. They got together, they enjoyed themselves as family, as friends. They had a glass or two or so of wine. They weren't drinking 6 glasses. And so to me, that is one of the best things you can do. Now, you don't need alcohol to do it. You can do it naturally by decreasing stress hormones. Now, what does that mean? Well, what about doing, and I know that you're big on this, a self-care day? What about if you took your Saturday or Sunday and you went to the spa, or you did an Epsom salt soak, or an exercise, a workout, and then acupuncture or light massage. All of those would work as well to reduce those stress hormones.
And a lot of people, when they come to me and they realize that I haven't had a sip of alcohol since 2010, they're like, how? Like, how have you done that? And how can I do that? Because they want to embark on that as well, and they just don't know where to start. And I'm the same as you. I always ask them, well, I want you to reflect on why. Why are you drinking? Why? Is it to numb? Is it to give you the confidence? Is it to fit in? Is it a bit of peer pressure? Is it to be cool? I personally think, we really need to look at the why, because those were the reasons why I did it. And I personally think they're not the best reasons. And so maybe next time you do go and have a drink, you ask yourself, well, why am I doing this? Do I feel peer pressure right now? Am I trying to fit in? Is it a habit? And be really honest with yourself, because often a lot of it is habit. Go and do something different. So when I realized, okay, this is not how I want to live my life anymore, I thought, okay, well, what am I going to do with my Saturday night? And what am I now going to do with my Sundays? And I had to create new healthy habits. And I didn't even know where to begin. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go for a walk with my friends, or I'm going to do something creative like an art class or a pottery class. I'm going to go stand up paddleboarding. I'm going to go to the beach. I'm going to play tennis. There are a million things that you can do in a social environment that don't require you to become unconscious and poison yourself. But I would love to shift gears a tiny bit now and go a bit more into the physical. So what does alcohol actually do to our gut? And can you talk about candida and leaky gut and the effects that alcohol has on this?
Without a doubt. And you're right. You eventually can have some alcohol, but in the beginning, people are trying to eliminate this food and that food, or they're on, even like a carnivore-based diet or keto-based diet, but then they're drinking alcohol on the weekend and saying, oh, it's keto-based alcohol. They just don't work together. Like, that's just not how things work. And so when you look at it, you're looking at alcohol and you're looking at predominantly fructans or fructose that is feeding the yeast or bacterial overgrowth. So a lot of people have candida overgrowth. Many other people have SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. But really what we're talking about are sugars that are in the alcohol. Now people say, well, this alcohol has no sugar. From a technical standpoint, that might be true in terms of sugar, but it has sugar alcohol. And that sugar alcohol falls under part of the FODMAPs, which just stands for fructo, oligo, di, mono, and polysaccharides, that feed yeast, feed candida, and feed bacteria. So when you look at that and when you drink alcohol, you are actually feeding the gut. It's why if you do have a balanced microbiome and you have a little bit of wine or a little bit of alcohol, it is actually acts as a prebiotic and feeds the bacteria. Now it does that if it's imbalanced as well. But another big thing that you get from alcohol, and it's not a good thing, that you wouldn't get from just say, like, let's say grapes or we'll say fruit, is that when you take in alcohol, you actually create increased intestinal permeability. We refer to it as leaky gut typically. Now, when this happens, you are spilling proteins, so you're going to become more intolerant to certain foods. You increase overall inflammation, whether it's bacteria spilling out, proteins, amino acids, yeast, etc. That's coming through the gut wall. Now, when that happens, inflammation increases. When inflammation increases, we begin to see things such as the first signs of dis-ease in the body. Many people end up with autoimmune-based issues. They end up with headaches or skin rashes such as psoriasis or eczema. They get rosacea. And we don't always attribute that to leaky gut. But we know now, very scientifically, that 90% of all autoimmune-based conditions have leaky gut intestinal permeability as its primary source, its primary underlying root cause of what set off the immune system. Now, there's debates of how the immune system gets set off, but there's not a debate that intestinal permeability begins to set off that cascade-based event.
So what about alcohol and hormones, especially women? Like, how does alcohol affect our hormones?
Alcohol creates more estrogen dominance. It can actually produce more estrogen. Multiple pathways. 1, it increases blood sugar. 2, it decreases restful sleep. 3, it can increase the fight or flight or stress-based response from a blood sugar. So what happens is when you drink alcohol, you actually spike blood sugar. But there's a subsequent event that happens the next morning, which is usually hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, which is how it affects your adrenals. Because then your adrenals get into a more of a fight or flight based response. It's the HPA axis, but for today's show, we'll just call it the adrenals. So your adrenals spike stress hormones, which are catecholamines, norepinephrine and adrenaline, and then cortisol. Well, that spikes it up and that brings more blood sugar into your bloodstream because your body needs that for fight or flight. And then you get this yo-yo based effect. So it affects mood and it affects, again, vasodilation, headaches. A lot of women get breast tenderness or they get skin rashes or they start to get PCOS based symptoms because then it can affect, again, when cortisol and stress goes up, progesterone goes down. Estrogen, I'll tell you this, is typically always normal on a lab test, almost always. However, progesterone is low, which means that women, it feels like high estrogen. And that's what estrogen dominance is, because estrogen has to be in balance with progesterone. When it's not, you get all of the symptoms of high estrogen, even if estrogen is normal, because it's not in balance. Your body always works to achieve something called equilibrium or homeostasis. When it can't do that, it has to compensate. And then we get the downfall. We get again, that's where the mood comes into it. The lower mood, the irritability, trouble sleeping, low libido, low ambition, low drive, brain fog. And I can't tell you how many women we've worked with and do work with all of those symptoms, and they have no idea that it's coming from estrogen dominance.
I really want everybody listening to consider the quality, and I'd love for you to shine some light on how important when it comes to alcohol is quality.
The quality, without a doubt, that matters. There's no doubt about that. I believe if you're going to drink wine, I would love to see people go with more of a dry red wine. I would love to see them in terms of looking for an organic, a biodynamic, which are different. So it has to do with the type of pesticides they use for the organic. And then also the biodynamic is how they're treating the soil, how they're growing in general. Like all of those things matter. So I would love to see that. You also support a lot of smaller wineries and vineyards, which is a great thing to do. You learn more about it, so that may allow you to reflect on other types of wine. You might feel less of the detrimental effects the next day. But, even if we're not talking about wine, the biggest thing that I see is what people are mixing a lot of these mixed drinks with. So if you're going out and you're getting, whether it's vodka or whatever else, rum, a lot of times you are taking the 30 grams or so of sugar that would be in one shot or 6 ounces of wine or, an 8-ounce beer or so. And you're then doubling that with a mixer. So if you're adding fruit juice to it or a sweet and sour mix or something like that, you're literally doubling the sugar content. So you're taking it from 30 grams or so for a lot, not all of them are 30 grams, but most are. And you're now doubling that to 60. And if we just do a quick multiple of 4, you're now taking in 240 calories. So that's just from the sugar of empty calories. And that is obviously not good for blood sugar, right? It's not good for body fat. And what it does is even more detrimental, which is how it throws off your immune system and it throws off your electrolytes.
A few years ago, I gave my dad a little assignment and I said to him, let's try as a New Year's resolution, let's try you not drinking a single drink for all of January. Okay, let's just try that. And don't change anything else. Like, I don't want you to change a single thing. And he didn't increase his exercise. He didn't change his diet. He was still eating exactly the same. And, my dad would have pretty much a glass every day, maybe more. And he enjoys different things. He enjoys spirits, he enjoys beer, he enjoys wine, he enjoys champagne. Like he doesn't just have one thing that he enjoys. And so he did it. He did all of January with 0 alcohol, not even a sip. And he reported to me on the 1st of February. And I said, Dad, how did you go? And he said, I have never felt better. Not only that, he lost 6 kilos and he was sleeping throughout the entire night, where in the past he would get up maybe 2, 3, 4 times a night to go to the bathroom. And so he was sleeping through the whole night and getting good quality sleep. He'd lost weight and he was no longer craving, the sugary, salty foods. And he even said, he was like, I would go out and all of his buddies were like, come on, have a drink. And he's just like, this is not the environment that I really want to be in. And so it really was such a big shift for him. And so I would love to hear, for someone who has a wellness goal of losing weight, let's talk about alcohol and weight gain.
Absolutely. And for anyone thinking that the story you just shared is unique to your dad, we see that every single week in our practice. You would not believe the life transformations that take place with going alcohol free for 21 days. And the worst, there's no downside. The worst thing is you tried it and you're like, oh, well, it wasn't that big a deal. But for a lot of people, the joint pain goes away. Just like you said, sleeping through the night and feeling well rested. And the reason is that you are getting into deeper levels of REM sleep. You don't get those full sleep cycles. So brain fog, cloudy thinking, you're going to have more of that the more alcohol you drink. So we know folate, B12, B6 are so important for neurotransmitters. I mean, just that alone, we talk about mood. Well, there's a reason why people reach for alcohol from a biochemical perspective. It produces more dopamine, at least while you're drinking it, and why your body craves it so much, but you're getting depleted and you're not making as much natural dopamine as well because your magnesium shortage, your B vitamin shortages. So all of that is huge. Now, in terms of weight loss, this is how I think of it. The reason why we tell people, no matter what you've tried before and you just haven't been successful, it's because you put weight loss before health.
I'm curious to hear about alcohol and mitochondria. How does that affect?
In terms of the mitochondria as well, the more stress you place on them, the more that they're not going to function to their top level. So if you were to drink, and I'm just talking about, let's say you had 1 or 2 glasses of alcohol on a Friday night or Saturday night. I don't think that's too detrimental. I really don't. But if you're doing it 2 days in a row, the recovery isn't there. Because when you create inflammation in your body, it typically takes 16 to 31 hours to reduce that inflammation from a food-based stress. And that includes alcohol. It's been shown that if you eat gluten or a process-based carb for many people, and you mix that with alcohol, it more than doubles the amount of time of the recovery process in inflammation. So we're typically looking at 31 hours or so. That's more than 1 day. So from Friday night, by the time you get to Saturday night, you're still inflamed from it.
So interesting. So interesting. Now, resveratrol, which is a polyphenol, which you can get from chocolate and blueberries, is also found in good quality red wine. And there are studies that show drinking a really good quality, biodynamic, organic, clean red wine decreases several inflammatory markers. Now, it's showing to also raise good cholesterol and decrease bad cholesterol. Is that correct? Or is this just stuff that people are kind of saying to validate their drinking?
Here's the thing. Approximately 26% of the population has something in what's called the ApoE genotype, and it's a 4 allele. Now, you get 2 copies. You get one from your mom, one from your dad. So you can be a 3-4 or a 4-4. And we know that people that have at least one copy of that 4 allele, they're in the 26% of the population. Those people more prone to cardiovascular issues, more prone to dementia and Alzheimer's. Okay, they're much more prone to inflammation. And when they've done clinical studies on people with the ApoE genotype 4, 3-4 or 4-4, but especially the 4-4, those people, when you give them alcohol, it decreases their good cholesterol, their HDL, and it increases the negative cholesterol, the LDL, from inflammation as an oxidative-based stress on the body. So it's really interesting because, again, there is 60% of the population with the 3-3, where if you give them 1 glass, that amount could increase good cholesterol and then decrease bad cholesterol for the 3-3. However, it does not outweigh all of the other factors that we spoke about for sleep, for cancer risk, etc.
And if someone listening wanted to do the gene testing to find out whether they have that gene, I've done it and I know there's 23andMe. What are some other gene testing websites that people can order a gene testing kit from?
Be careful who you're running your genetics through. So if the company is selling it at a very inexpensive price and they're collecting your data to be sold then to other companies, you have to be careful with that. So I can only recommend functional medicine based companies, or you can ask your doctor if they will run your ApoE genotype. Ask your PCP, ask your local functional medicine doctor if they're able to run that ApoE genotype. The test is only as good as the interpreter, right? So you just want to make sure it comes with good data behind it. A lot of times the inexpensive tests I don't love because then they don't tell you what to do with it. So you need to take that data and then run it through another software. Now someone else has your genetics. So anyway, that's why I'm partial, obviously, to functional medicine.